18 years, Natalie's case, it's solved. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. It's over. Joran van der Sloot is no longer the suspect in my daughter's murder. He is the killer. In the course of his felony prosecution, here for extortion and wire fraud indictment, he gave a proffer in which he finally confessed that he killed Natalie. He described when and how he killed her. And he said that after killing her on the beach in Aruba, he put her into the water, and that was the last that he ever saw her. That was all verified by a comprehensive and conclusive polygraph test. Even with this confession, though, he can't be tried here for Natalie's murder. But I'm satisfied knowing that he did it. He did it alone, and he disposed of her alone. Thanks to a lot of very smart and dedicated people here, I got the answer I've been searching for the past 18 years. Joran van der Sloot's confession means we have finally reached the end of our never-ending nightmare. And for me, reaching the end of the nightmare, being over, is better than closure. It's been 18 years since Natalie disappeared, and Natalie would be 36 years old today. I still miss her every day. It's been a very long and painful journey, but we finally got the answers we've been searching for all these years. We finally, today, we got justice for Natalie. So thank you all so very much and being supportive of us.
What if I told you that after 18 years of lies, deception, and countless false confessions, the most notorious missing person case of the 21st century would finally be solved by the very man who committed the crime? What if I told you that behind the tropical paradise of Aruba lay a darkness that would forever change one family's life and capture the attention of millions worldwide? Before we dive into this story that shocked the world, make sure you're subscribed to Dark Trail Files. We bring you the most gripping true crime cases with the depth and respect they deserve. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss our upcoming investigations into cases that have baffled authorities for decades. Now, let's uncover the truth behind one of America's most haunting mysteries. On May 26, 2005, Beth Holloway dropped her daughter off at a friend's house, where she would then be taken to the airport for a private flight to an island just off the coast of Venezuela. Natalee Holloway, an 18-year-old girl from Birmingham, Alabama, was planning on attending a 5-day unofficial graduation trip to Aruba. She and her 124 classmates and 7 chaperones were getting ready for a 6-hour flight across the Caribbean Sea, where they would celebrate their graduation. This extravagant end-of-the-year trip was somewhat of a tradition at the high school that Holloway attended, located in a wealthy suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. According to her mother, Holloway was a straight-A student. Having just graduated high school, she was on her way to the University of Alabama on a full scholarship, planning to pursue a pre-med track. But as her plane took off for Aruba, both Natalie and her dreams would soon disappear forever. Natalee Holloway was born on October 21st, 1986. At 7 years old, her parents, Beth and Dave Holloway, divorced, leaving Beth a single mother for 7 years before she would eventually marry Jug Twitty, a prominent Alabama businessman. The family lived in Mountain Brook, a municipality in Alabama known for being an affluent, upscale, almost all-white community. As Natalie was finally going into high school, the family was ready for a fresh start. The private plane had arrived at Queen Beatrix International Airport in Aruba on May 26th, marking the start of the class graduation trip. They had previously decided to stay at a Holiday Inn hotel in the northwestern region of the island, a mere 17-minute drive from the island's capital. And so, the celebration started. Witnesses would later say that the students were partying and drinking excessively, so much so that the Holiday Inn had expressed that they wouldn't be welcomed next year. Classmates of Holloway later recounted that she had been drinking excessively, so much that she hadn't shown up for breakfast 2 mornings. However, Holloway's mother maintains that her daughter didn't have a history of heavy drinking and admitted that Natalie was very smart, but very naive. On May 29, 2005, the day of her disappearance, Holloway had gone to a casino attached to the Holiday Inn hotel. Surveillance footage shows her sitting close to an unidentified man. Later in the day, witnesses recall that she went to a nearby bar and grill named Carlos in Charlie's and had been talking to an unidentified man before later leaving with the same man at around midnight. This was the last sighting of Natalee Holloway before she disappeared. The following morning, after failing to show up for the return flight back to the U.S., Holloway's friends checked her hotel room, where they found her passport and her luggage, as if she had been preparing for the return flight, but suddenly vanished into thin air. Beth Holloway was immediately notified of her daughter's absence, and on the same day, she, her husband, and a few family friends arrived in Aruba via private plane to help in the search for her daughter. Upon arrival on the island the night of May 30th, Beth had gone to the Holiday Inn hotel where Holloway had been living for the past 5 days, hoping to find some sort of clue that would eventually lead them to their daughter. After combing through the hotel and asking bystanders if they had seen or recognized Holloway, Beth stumbled upon the security footage taken at the casino the night before. It shows Holloway a few seats away from a man, later identified by hotel employees to be 18-year-old Joran van der Sloot. Some had even said that the man Holloway was dancing with at Carlos in Charlie's later the same day was also Joran van der Sloot. This grainy, overexposed surveillance footage showed the first and main lead that Holloway's parents had. After obtaining Joran's address through a few of his friends at a nearby lighthouse, Beth had decided to call the Aruban police. At this point, Holloway wasn't officially considered missing, as it takes 48 hours for a case to be declared a missing persons case. This legal hurdle undoubtedly affected the Aruban police's initial response to the situation, as several people who were there at the time described the Aruban police as sluggish or uninterested, convinced that Holloway would turn up sooner or later. Nevertheless, upon encountering Joran at his house in the nearby town of Newark, he was promptly questioned about his knowledge of Holloway's whereabouts. But it quickly became apparent that Joran and his stories were unreliable, to say the least. At first, Joran denied knowing who Holloway even was, but quickly realizing that the Aruban police had witnesses and surveillance footage, he started to tell his side of the story. He claimed that after meeting Holloway at the casino, she had invited him to go to the nearby Carlos, Charlie's later that day. Initially, Joran had declined, citing that Carlos and Charlie's was always boring on Sundays, but later in the day, he eventually accepted. So that night, Joran and two of his friends, Deepak and Satish Kalpo, drove to Carlos and Charlie's to meet up with Holloway, where they spent the night drinking and dancing. By almost all accounts, when Holloway was ready to leave at around midnight, she was extremely intoxicated. According to Joran and the Kalpo brothers, she had gotten into their car, though whether she was expecting to be taken back to her hotel or just wanted to hang out with the three boys is unclear. In the car, Deepak Kalpo was driving, as he was the owner of the car. Satish Kalpo, the younger of the two Kalpo brothers, was sitting in the front seat, while Joran and Natalie were in the back. Most sources on this topic agree that Holloway had asked Joran to drive her back to her hotel, to which he agreed. But this is where Joran's story becomes unclear. Initially, he said that he and his two aforementioned friends drove Holloway directly back to her hotel. Joran recalls that when they had arrived at her hotel, Holloway had stumbled out of the car, but denied any help from him. They said that while Holloway was walking to the hotel, they had seen a man dressed as a security guard approach her, and at that point, they had driven away. But this version of the story was later changed. He later said that he hadn't driven Holloway directly back to the hotel, and that they had taken a stop at a nearby lighthouse. The Kalpo brothers later said that Joran and Holloway were in the back seat kissing. Although the details of Joran's story often changed, both Joran and the Kalpo brothers maintained that Holloway was alive the last time they saw her. As tensions rose with Aruban police and Alabama parents, they decided to begin searching the beach near Holloway's hotel. After a series of radio announcements urging tourists and Arubans to come help in the search for Natalee Holloway, around 100 tourists and a handful of Arubans started searching a 4.5-kilometer stretch of coastline up until the island's lighthouse. By this point, the case had started getting more national recognition as the Dutch Marines later joined the search with helicopters and four-wheel drive vehicles, and the Justice Minister gave Aruban government employees a day off from work to join the search. At this point, the search had extended to include the sea just off the coast of the beach. But despite the number of people involved in the search, no physical evidence was ever found. So authorities, as well as Holloway's parents, turned to the three men that were last with Holloway, Joran van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers. On June 9th, 10 days after Holloway's disappearance and after immense pressure from the media and Holloway's parents, Aruban police finally arrested Joran and the Kalpoe brothers. However, upon questioning, Joran and the brothers changed their story again. This time they claimed that after going to the lighthouse, the Kalpoe brothers had driven off and left Joran and Holloway at a beach around half a mile away from her hotel. While on the beach, Joran claimed that Holloway had appeared to be too intoxicated, drifting in and out of consciousness and not being able to walk properly. At that point, Joran left Holloway at the beach, and that, Joran said, was the last time that he had seen Holloway. After around a month of false leads and clues, the Kalpoe brothers were eventually released from custody, while Joran was kept in the San Nicolas jail toward the south side of the island. By now, Holloway's case was attracting international attention, and leads from all over Aruba started pouring in, making it hard for the Aruban police to separate fact from fiction. In July 2005, a homeless man had said that he had seen a woman's body in a landfill, but upon numerous searches, nothing was found. In the same summer, a barrel had been seen out at sea. Upon dragging it out of the ocean, nothing was found inside. A park ranger had found a piece of duct tape with blonde hair stuck to it. Upon DNA analysis, it was concluded that it wasn't Natalie's. Almost every day, there was a new false lead for Aruban police to scrutinize, and with no additional information about Holloway, they were forced to release Joran van der Sloot from custody, a move that would later enrage Holloway's parents, especially Beth Holloway. With Joran out of jail, he was free to use his newfound celebrity status to his own advantage. In the following years, Joran would come forward with unreal stories of selling Holloway into human trafficking and claims of extortion. Soon after his release, Joran had agreed to multiple interviews, most notably with Fox News' Greta Van Susteren, a channel that had covered the case extensively. Joran seemed to know how to manipulate the U.S. media, receiving extensive media coverage for every new version of the story that he would come up with. In 2008, Joran had claimed that a few months before Holloway's disappearance, he had met a man that supposedly wanted a blonde girl in exchange for money. This again threw Joran into the spotlight, earning him another interview. He goes on to claim that the day Natalie went missing, he took her to the beach and gave her to a man in exchange for money, at which point the man put a drunk and confused Natalie onto his boat and sailed off. However, soon after this interview, he retracted his statements, claiming he had made the story up. Nevertheless, there is no evidence that Joran sold Natalee Holloway to human traffickers. However, there is some evidence that Joran might have aided in the human trafficking of other women. After more arrests and subsequent releases, the Natalee Holloway case was closed in 2007 without charging anyone due to a lack of evidence. During this time, the true crime community on TV and the internet almost unanimously agreed that Joran van der Sloot was to blame for Holloway's disappearance. However, much of the community that had rallied around the Holloway case had blamed the Aruban authorities just as much, if not more, than Joran himself. They often cite the lack of swift action from the authorities in the first 2 to 3 days of the case, and the fact that Joran and the Kalpoe brothers were released each time they were arrested. They often accuse the Aruban government of corruption or a massive cover-up. This led to calls to boycott the Aruban government. A website was even created in 2005 by the name of tohellwitharuba.com, urging visitors to shed light on the supposed corruption that was taking place in Aruba. Whether any of this is true is anyone's best guess. Nevertheless, the case slowly began losing momentum, and if you weren't a Fox News viewer, you would most likely have stopped following or even forgotten about the case. But in a sudden turn of events, the case would be reopened in February 2008 following a surprising confession from Joran van der Sloot. In the months leading up to February 2008, undercover Dutch reporter Patrick van der Em had befriended Joran after meeting him in a Dutch casino. Patrick had said that he was a substance dealer and regularly used illegal substances with Joran to gain his trust. After bugging his own car with microphones and cameras, Patrick's goal was to get Joran to confess. And in January 2008, after recording nearly 20-plus hours of footage, he had successfully done so. This confession, of course, was later retracted by Joran. He explained that he was under the influence of illegal substances and lied to impress Patrick van der Em, whom he thought was involved in illicit activities. Even with this damning evidence, authorities did not rearrest Joran, citing that there wasn't sufficient evidence to bring him back into custody. Later, underwater searches conducted near the Holiday Inn hotel turned up nothing, and in the end, this confession didn't amount to anything. However, more undercover footage would be released in the following months, apparently showing Joran trying to convince two Thai women to travel to Holland and become dancers for an adult entertainment establishment. But just like the hidden confession, this footage didn't amount to anything substantial. And once again, the case fell silent. After around 4 years since Holloway's disappearance, there were still no answers, with no physical evidence and no one held accountable. And so, in 2012, Alabama courts declared Natalee Holloway legally deceased, ending the 7-year saga of the Natalee Holloway disappearance. In 2010, Joran van der Sloot was arrested for a completely different crime: the elimination of a different woman named Stephanie Flores in Peru. After discovering security footage showing Joran meeting Flores in a casino and the two entering Joran's hotel room, he was arrested and pleaded guilty to the qualified elimination and simple robbery of Flores. Joran was sentenced to 28 years in prison before being transferred to a maximum security prison in Peru. Ever since 2005, the Natalee Holloway case has gotten increasingly popular, especially among the growing true crime community on the internet. The popularity of this case is staggering, and there are new theories posted every day on various online forums about what might have happened to Natalee. But other than a few false leads and misattributed remains, it seemed that the Holloway case was far from being solved. Unlike most missing persons cases that usually die down after a year or two, the coverage and interest in this case continued for multiple years, and part of the reason for this popularity was none other than the main suspect himself. Every few months or years, Joran would come out with a new convoluted story about what happened to Natalee, not only to cover his tracks, but to maintain his status in the public eye. Each new story earned him a new interview, a new cover story in the papers, and his face on the front page. But everything would change in 2023 when the world finally heard the words that Beth Holloway had been waiting 18 years to hear. In October 2023, 18 years after Natalee Holloway disappeared on that Aruban beach, the truth finally emerged. Joran van der Sloot confessed to authorities that he had caused Natalee's death on that beach and disposed of her body in the ocean. This confession came as part of a plea deal in federal court, where van der Sloot was facing extortion charges for attempting to extort money from Beth Holloway in exchange for information about her daughter's remains. In his confession, van der Sloot admitted to federal authorities that after Natalee rejected his advances on the beach, he became enraged and caused her death before disposing of her remains in the ocean. The confession detailed how van der Sloot had lured Natalee to a secluded area of the beach under false pretenses. When she refused his advances and attempted to leave, he lost control and harmed her fatally. He then admitted to disposing of her body in the ocean, which explained why her remains were never found despite extensive searches over the years. This long-awaited confession finally provided the answers that the Holloway family had been seeking for nearly 2 decades. However, even with this confession, not everyone in the investigation community believes the full truth has been revealed. T.J. Ward, a private investigator hired by Natalee Holloway's family in 2005 and again in 2010, does not believe Joran van der Sloot acted alone in causing the death of the 18-year-old high school graduate on May 30th, 2005. Ward has publicly stated his doubts about Van der Sloot's confession, questioning whether it tells the complete story. Ward insists the full truth remains buried and suspects Van der Sloot did not act alone. This seasoned investigator, who has worked on this case for decades, believes there are still unanswered questions about what really happened that night and whether others were involved in either the incident itself or the subsequent cover-up. The investigator's skepticism stems from years of analyzing Van der Sloot's various stories, witness statements, and the timeline of events. According to Ward, certain aspects of Van der Sloot's confession don't align with previous evidence and witness accounts, suggesting that there may be more to this story than what has been revealed. Ward has expressed concerns that Van der Sloot may be protecting others or that his confession is incomplete, leaving crucial details about that tragic night still unknown. After 18 years, Beth Holloway stated that Natalie's case has been solved, but for investigators like Ward, the search for complete truth continues. The confession may have provided legal closure, but it hasn't answered all the questions that have haunted this case for 2 decades. The Natalee Holloway case stands as one of the most captivating true crime stories of our time. It's a story of a mother's unwavering determination to find answers, of a justice system that struggled to provide them, and of a truth that took 18 years to emerge. It's a reminder that behind every headline and every news story, there are real families searching for closure and fighting for justice. From a graduation trip that was supposed to be the celebration of a young woman's bright future, to a confession that finally brought some peace to a mother's broken heart, the Natalee Holloway case will forever remain a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of never giving up the search for truth. This is Dark Trail Files, bringing you the stories that matter, the cases that captivate, and the truths that need to be told. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of America's most haunting mysteries. Remember to subscribe for more in-depth true crime investigations. And until next time, keep searching for the truth.